Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Quinn Li, Global Head of Qualcomm Ventures. Quinn, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for hosting the event. Pleasure to be here. Long story how I got into the venture business. I studied engineering undergraduate and I went on to graduate school. I studied communication system design, so information theory specific. Read a lot of books by Qualcomm's co-founders. I really got interested in engineering. And then after graduate school, I went on to work for Bell Labs and worked on 3G, wireless system design and standards. So now it's 5G, back then was 3G. Beyond the technical work I was working on in 3G technology development, I also had the opportunity to participate in standards bodies. So we were making proposals to the standards organization and working with other companies, the ecosystem, as well as customers to define what the 3G wireless standard is going to be. So through that experience, I learned that in addition to the technical work, which I enjoy to do, also the interaction with the other parties in the ecosystem, customers, other industry players, that part of it was very rewarding. And because in the standardization process, you have to make proposals, you have to negotiate with other companies. So that elements of the work was very intriguing. And I thought longer term, I think I want to do a much bigger role than just doing engineering work. So I decided to go back to business school to get an MBA. And that's when I got a taste of venture capital. So during the MBA program, I went to Cornell. There was a student-run venture fund and was more used as a learning vehicle for students to learn how to invest in venture-backed startups. So we have a team of, I think it was 10 people or so that was acting as investment professionals. I was looking at pretty early stage opportunities that's funded by Cornell alums or even current students that we were actually evaluating live investment opportunity and making smaller investment in these early stage companies. So that's my first experience with venture capital. And then post business school, I went on to work for IBM, took a job in product management. I thought I should get some basic business skills. And then Qualcomm is a company that I always wanted to work for because based on my graduate work, my field of study was all related to the CDMA technology, a lot of the pioneer work that Qualcomm did. And then I found out they had also this venture group. So I got to know the head of the venture group back then was in my current role today. And I got to know him and ask if there was an opportunity to work for the team. And then there was an opportunity came up when I was at IBM and I applied for the role and joined in back then in 2005. And then I started off as an individual contributor with the team. So I was looking at investment opportunities. In fact, the first investment I made was InventSense, which was bought by TDK later on. So that was a very interesting investment that I made. It wasn't an easy one to make back then, but it turned out very well. And then from there, my career progressed. And then I started to run the US team for a period of time. And then I took over as head of the group in the beginning of 2016.
Very nice. InventSense is interesting because indeed it was successful. It was not easy. It went to an IPO. That's how we actually knew each other from the connection with Behrooz, who was CEO of InventSense.
That's right.
And that was your first investment. So that I did not know. How did you get to decide to invest?
So we actually had a very thesis-driven approach to investing, which we still do today. And we looked at a lot of technologies that we think are going to make their way into the smartphone ecosystem. So we looked at motion sensors, for example, fingerprint sensors. And in the motion sensor category, we looked at various companies and then found InventSense really had good technology in terms of the initial product. It was a gyroscope and was making its way into cameras and personal navigation devices. Our view of the world back then was as these devices all converge, a lot of the functionalities from the digital still cameras as well as navigation devices all will be integrated into the smartphone at some point. So that was the vision. So because these gyros or motion sensors was integrated into these devices, our prediction of the future was at some point smartphones will adopt these devices as well. And then I met the founder, Steve Nasseri, back then. He was a very experienced entrepreneur, had a couple of startups prior, and was able to basically on Series A to get to shipping a product, which is very impressive for a company that's making a hardware product. So I was very impressed by the CEO, and we had a good understanding of the market landscape and found that InventSense had really good technology and had good customer traction. So that's why I decided we'd invest in InventSense.
Very nice. This was your first investment and it went IPO. So I think you put all of us to shame, I think.
Obviously, there's good timing, I would say.
So maybe you can walk us through one of your amazing success, which is Zoom. Zoom is not an obvious fit to any business unit, but at the same time, it's about mobile technology. So can you walk us through the investment thesis and also how you decided to invest?
Yeah, Zoom was an interesting one. When we looked at the Zoom back then, obviously there was a lot of other companies with video conferencing solutions already in the marketplace. What we liked about Zoom was it was a platform that's designed, it's very easy to use, right? When they designed it in the beginning, was meant to be cross-platform, meaning it's not PC-centric. It's meant to work across mobile devices, laptops, tablets, as well as desktop PCs, right? It's really meant to be a cross-platform device. So one of the things I think got interested for us on Zoom was, one is it's a great use case of a lot of wireless data, right? You consume a huge amount of data, whether it's the enterprise network or through the cellular network. It's just a lot of consumption of wireless data. And the other aspect I think we found that was interesting was we could potentially work with them, help them to optimize the experience running on the devices that are powered by our processor, right? There are certain optimizations we could work with Zoom on to help optimize the end-to-end experience. So you're correct, it was not necessarily a perfect fit with a particular business unit, but it's in the broad scheme of video communication is going to be important. We see getting people connected, and evident by the pandemic, Zoom become a household name. And also we met an entrepreneur, was one of the entrepreneurs we ever met, Eric. And he was just so passionate. He just wanted to make a better video communication product, a product that's so easy to use, that works across platforms, that the user experience is just awesome. So we were very impressed by Eric and the vision he has, and then decided to invest in the company.
So how much of the strategic value do you bring to the startup? And then we will talk about the startup bringing back to the mothership, but how much of the value do you package and you can replicate across your many portfolio companies?
Yeah, I would say the value we provide to the startup probably varies, depends on where the company is in their development and also what sorts of help they need, right? So I think a lot of times the company looked at as we're a technology enabler. We provide technologies to a variety of industries. And a lot of times in technology selections, let's say companies like Xiaomi, for example, right? They're obviously a leader in the smartphone business. And we were able to work with them very early on in terms of as a new customer in the smartphone ecosystem. Obviously back then they were very small, but we were able to identify them as a emerging customer, if you will, and work with them very closely to jointly develop product. And then over time, they obviously had huge success. And then that's a situation where it was a very good investment on one hand, and on the other hand, it would also become a very good customer of Qualcomm. So it's a win-win situation in that scenario. So I would say it's the technology insight that we can provide to some of these startups, the connections we can make with the products groups that we have. Sometimes it's hard for startups to navigate Qualcomm also, so we can help make that connection. And then sometimes if a startup's looking for customers in our ecosystem, for example, if they wanted to talk to a mobile operator, for example, we certainly work a lot with the mobile operator as well. So if they're looking for a connection to our ecosystem of partners and customers, we can certainly facilitate those kind of introductions.
Very nice. How do you ensure that you're going to deliver on the value Qualcomm can bring to the portfolio company? Especially you don't need sponsorship, you just need buy-in maybe. But how do you track the value you bring to the portfolio company? Do you have a team for that? Is it you tracking it?
Yeah, so I think that's one area we're continuously looking for improvements. We do have a couple of folks on the team that helps with making the connections with the BUs. And although we don't need like strict sponsorship, but we get the buy-in from VU is also very important, because a lot of times in the beginning, maybe the BU near-term focus is not in this particular area, right? They're just not ready to engage, for example. But at least they're aware, okay, we're making this investment. There could be intersect down the road. And then some time passed, maybe a year passed, and then they said, okay, now is the time to engage. So it happens quite a bit. At the time when we make an investment, maybe there's not a immediate interest to engage, but over time, that interest materializes, and then we see active engagement between companies. So I think as a team, we're really trying to do as much as we can to make the connection with the Qualcomm business unit, and then trying to help the companies, whether it's business development efforts or other things, to the extent possible beyond just the capital, right? We really want to, at the end of the day, these companies or this investment we have to grow over time to be very successful. And then ideally to also have this connection with Qualcomm as well.
I would nearly argue that the portfolio companies where you didn't have direct engagement with Qualcomm at the beginning, but a few years later, you start to have Qualcomm wanting to engage with your portfolio companies, is telling that you were really good at spotting the mega trend or where Qualcomm should go. I'm sure there's an analogy in the sport where you should go where the bucket goes. I can't remember the term, but so that I think is really a good sign when you could show that one of the portfolio company you invested, some of your team in your mothership wants to engage.
At that point, I think what we're trying to do is, obviously, we look at the market and see where emerging sort of technology comes. And then the other thing I think is also important, goes to my point about being disciplined. We're trying to identify winners in a particular area. Now, it's not always easy to do, but to the extent it's possible, if you can identify the winners early on in this particular market segment, they're going to do both well financially because they're leader in the space, and the chances of them intersecting with Qualcomm at some point increases as well. So I think understand the space, trying to identify, pick winners early on. That's key.
I can't agree more. And maybe I will share something, which is Xiaomi. I saw them early and I didn't think they were going to be the winners. Gosh, I was proven wrong here.
It's not easy. Early days are not easy. It wasn't obvious. Zoom, right, when we invested early, was not an easy decision.
I think you're making a good point, which is a golden nugget, which is once you pick the winners or the future winners, once they become winners, of course your mothership would want to engage with them because they become obvious partners or customers or go to market or whatever it is that your mothership would want to work with them.
That's right. I think the hard part is to identify them early before they become obvious winners. That's the hard part.
And so here I want to touch on one word you said, which I think touch exactly on spotting the winners or identifying which ones could become the winners, which is the word discipline. Can you double click on that word? What does that mean for you and for your team?
I would say discipline just means we have a framework upon which we look at investment opportunity. One is to really understand the sector well. So we do a lot of research in the sector we invest in. We understand the competitive landscape of what are different players out there and trying to identify winners, right? We don't get it right every time, but I think if you understand the space well, you tend to have a higher probability to find the winners. So that's one. And then the other part of being disciplined, we do want to make sure that we invest in companies that got good investors, got good management team, that's got a highly differentiated product, right? Because over time, it's the team behind the business that makes the business work ultimately, right? So it's very important we work with really great founding teams. We have good investors around the table to support the company, because that's just going to increase their probability of success. So just the approach being more systematic, don't get carried away by too much by the external noise, just be more focused on good teams, good product, good differentiation. And then obviously we need to be careful with valuation and so forth to make sure we make a good return on investment.
So some of the examples you mentioned, maybe you need to take a contrarian view. Like you said, you need to identify the ones that could be winners before it becomes obvious. I've talked to many CVCs who unfortunately have very big investment committee and everyone needs to vote yes, which doesn't drive even a chance for a contrarian view. You need consensus. How do you drive your investment decisions in Qualcomm Ventures And how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, so we actually have a very democratic process. We get to the senior members of the team, it's called a managing director, they get to all vote on the opportunity. And oftentimes, some of the success we've had, like one good example would be a company like Fitbit. There was a lot of controversy in the beginning. Can they sustain the business over time? Is it just a simple pedometer and so forth, right? But I think sometimes that we find is some of the controversial deals, you have to believe if the person who's proposing or recommending investment is very passionate about the investment opportunity, and he or she just has huge amount of conviction. And sometimes you just got to lean forward and not let the sort of the voting get in the way, right? So I say this person has such strong conviction on the investment opportunity. We should just lean in and see if it works.
Very good. So you've been the head of the CVC for 5 years plus. Is there anything else in terms of marketing Qualcomm Ventures you've done that you think is really helping you, whether it's to reach out to entrepreneurs or to reach out to the VC community or other partners?
There's always things that we can do. We have a CEO summit every year. I think we find the event to be very helpful in terms of both making the connections with the investor base and our portfolio companies, as well as the Qualcomm team, our internal employees, execs, and so forth. So we have this event once a year. We couldn't do one last year. We're thinking about doing one in 2022. We find that event to be very helpful, both from a brand perspective, marketing perspective, as well as just to reconnect with people, to make sure that people know us in our ecosystem. And then we also do matchmaking during the event. So many of these portfolio companies could meet with Qualcomm folks as well as potential investors. So we find that event to be quite helpful.
I think it's a great event, but you need enough portfolio companies to do it. So what do you think is the right size of portfolio companies, and of course the alumni who have exited but still part of the family? When do you think it starts to make sense to have that kind of events?
The first one we did, we probably didn't have that many portfolio companies. If you have 20 portfolio companies, I think you can easily do it. Because even we have a very large portfolio, there's only so many speaking slots or so forth you can put portfolio company on stage. So usually we have maybe 10 or 15 companies speak at an event. And then the other folks would just attend and maybe do networking and so forth. But if you have 10 or 20 companies, I think you could do it. And you may not want to do a huge event. We've grown the event also over time to the last one. I think we had close to 300 people attend. But the earlier ones, many years back, I remember was very small.
Yeah, your event is world class. I really think it's organized, and it's all about the networking. That's what I took away from it. Is it's really about networking.
Yeah, as many events do. The content is interesting, but a lot of times people want to talk to other portfolio company or investors or just Qualcomm people, because there's a lot of Qualcomm people attend this event as well. So they're trying to make some new connections. So I think overall it's just a good venue to get people together.
One of the events you invited me to, your CEO was speaking, and it had such an impact on me. And that was only 2 years ago, but it had such an impact on me because he was giving two good analogies about leadership. And I won't give justice to explain it, but I remember it was about the submarine and the wolves. And that was such good analogy to leadership. I don't know if you recorded him when he spoke. This is so good. I recommend you post it somewhere on YouTube, because leadership can be something really hard to comprehend, and I love the way he explained it.
Yeah, that was a very good chat. I remember it was at the end of the last CEO summit in 19. It was a very good chat with our CEO.
It was just amazing. So talking of CEO and management, how much do you interact with the top management? How much updates do you give them? Is that on a regular basis? Is that on a ad hoc basis? What would be your best practice here?
Yeah, so I have a direct sort of boss, if you will, but I have other senior management team that I report to indirectly, I would say. So I send them quarterly updates on just the overall activities with our team. So that's something I send. And then on a quarterly basis, I have sync ups with folks on the team, just give them key updates on what's happening. And then throughout the period, there's opportunities just comes our way. Sometimes it could be a new investment opportunity. I want to expose it to them. Sometimes it just could be a portfolio company that's one of the good ones that I want to highlight to them. So I have to be careful with use their time and so forth. I use different ways to get some information I send, and some are more through a company meeting or a discussion with a specific portfolio company.
Actually, one thing which you explained, but maybe it's good to make it clear to the audience, is your investment committee to make decisions is inside Qualcomm Ventures. You don't need your top management to approve a check size, correct?
So it's not quite entirely true. We do have investments. So our treasurer, which doesn't technically part of Qualcomm Ventures, he does get involved in approving investments.
Okay.
And then up to a certain dollar size. And if it's much bigger investment, then it goes to the senior management.
Okay. So there's value to keep updating the top management anyway about how the portfolio companies go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I send a quarterly updates so they get a sense of what are some of the new investments, what are some of the companies that's exited, and then also what are some of the key engagements between the companies and our business unit. So they get a quarterly summary of the activities from me every quarter.
Very nice. And I assume it's not just the strategic value, but also the financial returns you are updating them on.
Yeah, both the financial as well as the engagements. Yeah.
Very good. So one of the things that I learned when I went to Monterey in GCV was a CVC is only a CVC when it survives a CEO. Yeah. I believe you survived at least 3 CEOs. So
from my time, I've been there 2 CEO transitions. This is my 3rd CEO.
Yeah. And with Christian Amon, this was probably one of the smoothest transition ever.
Yeah, Cristiano's been with the company for a long time, so he obviously knows what we do. So it's not as much educating you have to do. He's seen us operating, and he's obviously familiar with us, and we've done well over time. And yeah, it was a fairly smooth transition, I would say.
Yeah. So I want to end the interview with a looking forward question, which is really about where do you see beautiful opportunities for you to invest in the next 2 years? What do you think will really be moving the needle both for Qualcomm, but maybe also for society?
Yeah, so one area we've been actually spending a lot of time on is broad area of applied AI, right? So we've built a lot of capabilities in our chipsets in terms of AI capabilities. So autonomous cars is an example, but on mobile devices, we have AI engines as well, right? So we're interested in use cases. Could be language use cases, could be video use cases, to be able to leverage a lot of the capability we have in these devices. If you look at the world today, all the devices, the smartphones connect to the cloud. So we're about creating this connected intelligent edge, right? Whether it's a mobile device, whether it's a robot, whether it's an autonomous car, we want to be able to work with these companies that's creating this world of all these devices being smart, being connected. We want to find new use cases, and we wanted to invest in some of these companies to help them to leverage the technology we have and trying to create this ecosystem of more interesting use cases, more companies that's leveraging AI and connectivity to build this world that I think will have a huge impact on society.
I can sense your conviction and passion when you describe that future. It's really nice. Quinn, I want to thank you for your time. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience will learn a lot from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for the opportunity. You've been very kind, and hopefully people get some insights out of this. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Full of golden nuggets. Thank you so much, Quinn. Bye.
Thank you, Nicholas. Bye-bye.